The holiday season has just started wrapping up, and I'm going to take a wild guess and assume you bought most, if not all, of your presents online. It makes sense. The internet has the widest selection of things from Wish.com oddities to video games and Christmas sweaters. But a lot of the younger generation might not have experienced or known that there was a time before everything from everywhere around the world was available on a convenient website. Before there were online shopping websites stealing your data and asking about cookies, there were mail-order catalogs, booklets sent out by or ordered from a retailer with items pictured or listed and bought by consumers by using a mail-in form and payment like a check that was sent with it. The earliest catalogs date back to the 1800s, but these catalogs and those of the later decades still couldn't provide the kind of variety that the internet does today. And that's why by 1955, evolved from catalogs, bazaars, and shopping centers, the Valley Fair Shopping Mall was built in Appleton, Wisconsin, the first indoor enclosed shopping mall of its kind. While you might know shopping malls, usually just called malls, as huge buildings with multiple stories and hundreds of stores, the Valley Fair Mall opened with only 6 stores. Included in these 6 was a liquor store, grocery store, hardware store, and bakery, which is also a bit different from the typical modern mall that's mainly filled with clothing and specialty stores. It stayed mostly unchanged for the next couple of decades, but underwent a large-scale renovation starting in 1978. An extra wing was added, with space created for over 15 new shops. Now, instead of just a local Wisconsin bakery and liquor chain, the people of Appleton could visit spectacles like Radio Shack, Hallmark Cards, and Kohl's. There was even a 3-screen movie theater added and updated renovations made to the older 1950s portion of the mall. Now complete with a Hallmark and a department store, Valley Fair Mall was starting to look the part of the classic American shopping mall. And it wasn't just Wisconsin that got this treatment. With a shift to suburban living, more large-scale shopping centers were built in suburban areas all over the country from coast to coast, and by the late 70s to early 80s, there were more renovations for bigger buildings and more shop space. Brand new centers were also being built to be marketed exclusively as shopping malls, and this was the start of the explosive popularity of malls in America in the 1980s. There's a sociology concept called third place, which describes a social space for the average working person that's different from 1, their home, and 2, the workplace. A third place can be anything from a church to a cafe, and exists as a neutral space to relax in with a low profile, little obligation, and social freedom. Third places are important to the average worker because they can hang out in a way that they can't or won't at home or the workplace. To skip the rest of the sociology lesson, the point here is that the expansion of shopping centers into suburban America led to the expansion of these centers into shopping megaplexes, large-scale malls that had shopping, food, and activities. The malls of the 80s created a third place for millions of people, which was a huge factor towards their success and popularity. Current shopping mall staples like JCPenney, The Gap, Zales, and Claire's, which I made a video on, by the way, were now available to even more shoppers than before. There was plenty of variety to meet anyone's tastes, making the mall a perfect place for browsing window shoppers and gift givers alike, especially during the holiday season. With catalogs having a limited variety and the brand new invention of the internet having yet to be utilized for selling V-Bucks and Chinese sweatshop clothes, the mall was most Americans' #1 spot for not just their shopping needs, but their shopping experience. Decorative architecture and accents like fountains made the mall a sprawling hub of everything inviting and engaging. Malls even factored in psychological gimmicks to keep customers buying, with tile largely being used instead of or replacing carpet so that it wouldn't slow down customers with its increased traction, and large skylights allowing in daylight that would slowly be replaced by gradually increased electric lighting to make it seem as though the day and the shopping could go on forever. This popularity around shopping malls continued into the 90s and early 2000s, with different stores and activities coming and going as favorites over the years. If you didn't want to go get your ears pierced at Claire's, you could eat some fast food in the food court, visit Santa if it was the right time of the year, or you could catch a movie, which, while you were watching, might even remind you why you liked being at the mall so much. Among my favorite genres of movies as a kid were chick flicks, a slang term to describe the genre of movies that are catered to the typical interests of women and marketed towards a feminine demographic. Sleepover, an early 2000s film about teenagers having the most stereotypically girly slumber party ever, was one in particular that I watched a lot. And while a lot of chick flicks tend to have a lot of overlapping features like crushes on boys and a dramatic expression of emotion, another key feature that a lot of these movies have is the feminine trope of materialism, specifically the love of clothes, shopping, and of course, shopping malls. I can't count the number of scenes I've watched that include some sort of outfit try-on montage or shopping at the mall montage, and in a lot of these movies, there's sometimes even both. Even Sleepover, a movie that's meant to mainly be about sleeping over, has this group of girls visit an Old Navy at the mall just to push that it's where you should want to be. These movies further marketed and popularized the idea of spending time at the mall, especially if you wanted to look as cool as you feel, through wearing the hottest clothes and carrying armfuls of branded paper shopping bags. I haven't been to a proper shopping mall in years, but I can still remember the empowering feeling of walking through a crowded mall holding all 3 of my shopping bags, probably from the children's place and Payless. I'm pretty sure I asked to carry my mom's bags at the mall more than once just so I could feel like one of the cool girls in the movies. During my tween years around the early 2010s, malls were still a pretty popular place to hang out. My friends and I would usually just wander around looking for something to entertain ourselves, which mostly involved playing with the testers at Brookstone, a shop that I can only describe as a gimmicky gadget store. And if we happen to get lucky and have over $7 in our pockets, jumping on those trampoline harness things for an exciting 5 minutes. But as I grew older with the rest of my generation that was raised on mall-centric media and movies, going to the mall just started to seem less and less appealing. I've grown to understand that I'm not much of a people person in general, so being surrounded by crowds of people in a huge building with artificial lighting and recycled air ended up, more often than not, just giving me a headache. And for those who were chasing a social element more than I was, the mall turned out to not really be the place for it either. As the internet offered more and more social media like MySpace and Facebook, malls were becoming overshadowed as the place to meet and chat with your friends. The internet was also turning into a marketable addition to the retail industry, with more and more retailer and company websites cropping up as a convenient way to get the cool girl mall clothes without the hassle of actually visiting the mall in person. And some stores, as fate would have it, were just losing their appeal altogether. Department stores sell a wide range of products in different areas or departments of the store, hence the name. They tend to offer higher quality, more luxurious, and consequently more expensive items, which separates the likes of JCPenney, Saks Fifth Avenue, and Sears from their lower-cost competitors. As these stores need to be on the large side to house their wide product variety, department stores and the big sections they fill are often the anchor stores of shopping malls. Anchor stores have a broad appeal and attract more customers, which makes them key components of malls to both the property owners and consumers. So why were these once anchor stores beginning to die out altogether? The answer isn't quite as simple as just a decline in middle-aged moms who want to buy cashmere sweaters and overpriced face creams in one store, and it's a little more economical than you might think. Since department stores tend to sell items in a higher price range, this limits the amount of people who can actually afford to shop at them. The middle class is the main demographic for these stores because upper class society is busy buying $1,800 distressed shoes, and the lower class is oftentimes struggling to even put food on the table, which puts Macy's pantsuits and perfumes out of the question. Since the 70s though, more and more people are below the threshold of the middle class bracket and falling further towards the lower class. The 61% of Americans in the middle class bracket in 1971 has lowered to 50% in 2021. The dissolving of the middle class is mainly due to a lack of wage increase as the years go by, which means, for the story of the shopping mall at least, that less and less people are able to afford the stores that used to be marketed specifically to them and their income group. And beyond the department stores, I think the majority of the entire mall experience was marketed towards the middle class too, with overpriced food in the food court to overpriced commodities at specialty stores like Pandora, Mac, and Godiva. There are tons of other stores that sell jewelry, makeup, and chocolates, but it was these stores, and others like them, that were always appearing in shopping malls, appealing to the middle class of people looking to spend their 2.5% yearly average of disposable income. This change was best represented by the so-called retail apocalypse of 2017. Over 12,000 physical stores were closed in 2017, mostly due to things like rising rent, buyouts, bankruptcies, and delayed effects from the economic recession of 2008, like changes in the average person's spending habits. Department stores have seen further decline, with even the biggest of department store giants like JCPenney and Sears filing for bankruptcy over the last few years. And overproduction of malls is also to blame for the lack of revenue and popularity of physical stores, particularly those inside of shopping malls. 1,500 malls were built in America between 1956 and 2005, and were being built faster than the growth of the country's population at some points. In 1992, New York Times counted 48 malls within a 90-minute drive of Times Square. That's arguably too many for anyone, anywhere, even the people-packed city of New York. In addition to all of this, the societal, cultural, and economic changes of the last couple of years that have followed the pandemic haven't really helped either. The effects of COVID and its restrictions on social gatherings and available employment made a record number of stores filing for bankruptcy in 2020, with a lot of stores closing or shutting down entirely. Even more affordable brands like Forever 21 and Payless Shoe Source, both frequent mall space renters, have been affected too. Forever 21 has closed around 200 stores since 2019 and filed for bankruptcy in the same year. They do have around 600 stores still open though, which is more than Payless can say. After filing their second bankruptcy in 2019 also, Payless has closed all 2,500 of their North American and Puerto Rico stores, now only selling in South America and Asia. But people are still buying. The pandemic made people a little bit poorer and worse for wear, but not without materialism. So if less often at physical stores and a lot less often at malls, where are they getting their overpriced Brookstone gadgets and cheap fast fashion clothing now? Well, maybe you've heard of a little company called Amazon, founded and headlined by the once #1 richest man in the world, and still sitting at a comfortable number 4 on the list, Jeff Bezos. In 2016, Amazon received 38% of all online revenue during the holiday season, the busiest shopping time of the year. And in 2017, the same year as the deemed retail apocalypse, Amazon was making more than 50% of the growth of retail sales. And it's not only Amazon either, though it does dominate the online marketplace. Plenty of brands that were once the faces of physical shopping malls have now turned to online sales through their websites, most of the time with measurable success. Shopping online is, like we've covered, a lot more convenient than visiting a physical store, especially when companies like Amazon can offer such a wide variety of items and ship them to your door so quickly. So what's the fate of the Great American Mall? In some niches of the internet, you can find a decent amount of people posting about abandoned buildings, urban exploration, and liminal spaces, all of which, a good amount of the time, can include malls in their examples. These aren't the bustling 1980s or Black Friday crowd versions of malls though, but the result of all of the factors that brought on their downfall. Many malls nowadays in 2022 are often pretty barren, with only a handful of customers around, if that. Tons of storefronts are shuttered as more stores pull out from lack of business, bankruptcy, and similar causes. These dead malls, as they're called, that are devoid of what they once were and stand as large open spaces with little purpose now, are usually categorized as a liminal space, or the time between what was and what's next, giving them a sort of melancholy and sometimes dreamlike feel. With so many malls becoming uninhabited, the phenomenon of dead malls even has its own Wikipedia article. Not every mall in the country has become a dead one, but it's safe to say that a majority of them have. Some businesses are attempting to revamp these old spaces by filling in old stores with restaurants and entertainment like bowling, skating, and other recreation. Retail leasing is even up as of June 2022. But as for the majority of these malls, these huge buildings, now just big open floors and barely staying afloat, are just taking up space, especially since so many malls were built so quickly. In addition to the entrepreneurs who are attempting to revitalize dead malls, Amazon, of all businesses, is also involved in the talks of converting some department store spaces like Sears and JCPenney into fulfillment centers where orders can be picked, packed, and shipped from. The biggest mall owner in the US, Simon Property Group, is headlining this chat with Amazon as it's losing out on a lot of rent money while a lot of malls remain empty. But industrial buildings are zoned differently than commercial buildings, which can cause problems when trying to convert the old department store spaces. So even this venture to do something with these all but barren wastelands of deserted shopping centers might not even come to fruition. As much as I can sometimes hate being out in the world too much, especially when it comes to crowded shopping areas, there is definitely still something nostalgic in the feeling of a busy shopping mall. As they existed as third spaces, there was a big draw to them beyond just shopping, a place where tween girls can eat a soft pretzel and gossip about cute boys, among other things. I doubt there will ever be a day when physical stores are phased out altogether, but obviously a mall is more than just the Walmart down the road. They were, and still are to an extent, huge pieces in American societal and cultural history, even if Amazon does end up moving into them next.